So I said Q&A was wide open, and I think, so Sam, what's our program? You're just gonna walk with the mic? So any topic you want to go to. I have no compliance officers here, so if you want stock tips, I can do that.
Thank you so much for the incredible message. Question on innovation. So obviously you were referencing how we had all of the pieces for innovation. Fire, at the end of the day, will also burn you. Obviously there's a lot of conversation around artificial intelligence, the fear that comes with that. How should, as Christians, should we look at innovation both as a good and a productive thing, but also as a sin-filled and potentially dangerous?
You know, it's funny, I've been asked the AI question at every event I've done since the book came out. And between media interviews and speeches, it's over 200. And the AI topics always come up. And I often, not all the time, but I often use the analogy I did in my talk today about fire. And mankind innovated, they figured out how to rub the things together to somehow get fire. And I've never thought of these things connected in the way that you just either accidentally or purposely did. But there's a good analogy in that. Because I believe in sin's corrupting effects, and because I believe in grace restoring nature, we all at once in fire have something that is incredibly beautiful and productive and opportunistic to give us warmth and to allow us to cook food and to do all sorts of things that are necessary for human flourishing. And we have the ability to destroy buildings and destroy institutions and kill people and do bad. And the bad parts that come from fire are a byproduct of the corrupting effects of sin into nature. And the good parts are a byproduct of God's design for the world. And my view with AI, it's always very tricky when I'm making up an analogy real time, because then sometimes I get halfway through and I go, wait a second, I just screwed that up. But so far I'm feeling pretty good about this. AI has all at once the potential to be harnessed and used in a very wonderful, productive, innovative, God-glorifying way, and the ability to be used for great damage. Now, what is the greatest hedge I can think of against AI going bad? Many people would say, well, we need certain regulations, and maybe the state has a place in that. Some would say that we need to shut it down. Some would say we need to take a breath and evaluate for years and years what we want to do, while meanwhile China just goes forward and does it all. So there's these different economic and civic ideas, and some of them are going to be good ideas and some are not going to be good ideas. But I just want to ask you, if 30 years ago, Christians, particularly in Silicon Valley technology, adopted the theological framework that Pastor Tyson and I are advocating for today, and we had significant, not peripheral Christians in the technology sphere, but like a complete and total influence and shaping of the sector. If the stewards of the next generation's AI were believers, would you be afraid? See, this to me is the opportunity. AI is fast and powerful. God is faster and more powerful. And what I would like to see is people who choose to serve God be at the cutting edge of this technology's development and implementation. I do not say any of this to take lightly the complexity of what we face. I do push back because I've read the Bible enough to know that there's nothing new under the sun. I do not accept the premise that everything is different this time. From going back to the fire analogy, but throughout all of human history, we have encountered things that have the ability to do great damage and the ability to do great good. And it is our responsibility as grace restores nature to fight like mad for a godly implementation of artificial intelligence. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks so much. My name's Doug. I'm a startup founder in the consumer space. Like you, I also split my time with the East Coast and the West Coast, actually also with Newport Beach. One of the things I was finding in my own career is that locational flexibility provides a great deal of good. And during your talk, you mentioned you have thoughts about work from home. I know, the likes of like Scott Galloway, for example, have spoken a lot about the need to be in office. It sounds like you share maybe perhaps a lot of his views, maybe for similar, maybe for different reasons, but maybe we can get into it. Why do you not like work from home? or geographic flexibility, for lack of a better term?
Well, I don't think I said anything or have said anything against geographic flexibility, but I think that that is a different category than what I'm referring to about work from home versus work from office. If I were against geographic flexibility, then I'm quite a hypocrite, because every morning when I wake up, the first thing I have to do is look at my weather app to see what city I'm in. So I'm all for the fact that there is a certain mobility that is sometimes necessary in a lot of people's vocation. It sounds like you do a bicoastal thing. I not only live bicoastally, but as you mentioned in the bio, my company's getting ready to open our 11th office nationwide. And so I'm all for the geographic flexibility aspect to the extent it's all harnessed and connected on the mission of the business. But I don't want to cause any ambiguity here. I don't believe that my criticism is of all situations in which a person finds themselves working at their kitchen table. That's not ever what I've said. I also believe there are a lot of people that had a kind of work from home job that lent itself to a lot of solitude in their unique profession or unique company or the unique source of their livelihood that far predated COVID. What I resist controversially and ferociously is that somehow something changed just because we found out people could order DoorDash and could store documents on the cloud and could see somebody else on a computer screen via Zoom, that it meant that all of the old order of creating brand, creating collaboration, creating company culture all became obsolete. But you know who else has also decided that that wasn't true? Everybody. All the companies that said, we're now full-time, work from home, we don't have to have people come back anymore. And I would walk around the city and I saw JP Morgan's tower getting built at 47th and Park. At the time, my office at 44th and Lex, I walked by it every day when it was just in the early phases, right as COVID was going on. And I said, they're gonna house 10,000 workers a day. They say they're gonna spend $2 billion, which means they're gonna spend $4 billion. And I'm supposed to think no one's coming back to work. And Facebook signed the largest lease in New York City office history over by Penn Station, right in the middle of saying no one's coming back to work. I never believed it. And one by one, they've all changed. So what I can't do and wouldn't dare to do, I was way more arrogant at a younger age, but I'm totally humble enough to admit that there's certain scenarios that are gonna allow for something more carved out. But I am, as a 51-year-old, very opposed to the idea that those of us who can get our work done from a Starbucks by ourselves after we spent 20-something years being mentored by others, that we don't have any obligation to be in the hallways of our business talking to our younger people. I just think it's grotesque and I'm tired of it. I hope that answers your question.
Hey, David. I'm Sunny. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I actually watched a lot of your father's presuppositional apologetic stuff growing up, and so it was really helpful for me.
Thank you.
So really appreciate that. I guess maybe I'll share some context about how I've been thinking about faith and work, and maybe a lot of people here might relate with it. So prior to switching jobs, I worked as a quant trader and worked 12-hour days, and I just felt so unbalanced in terms of being able to, I felt so isolated from community, didn't feel like I was able to consistently do my devotionals. I would literally type my prayers on a Word doc at work in white font so that no one could see it or ever, try to do my devotionals just because I couldn't squeeze in all of that in a full 24-hour day or whatever, right? And so after switching jobs and going to something a lot more laid back, I was able to feel a lot more healthier, feel a lot more integrated, start serving, be able to do Bible studies for my parents who are non-Christian, things like that, right? And so I just get this impression that at the end of the day, my relationship with work is, it is to some degree an allocation problem, right? Whereas I feel that what Christians need the most is not the extra marginal, from going from 50 hours of work to 60 hours of work, right? At the expense of 10 hours of prayer or 10 hours of devotionals or whatever it might be, right? I feel there's an allocation problem there, right? So how do you kind of respond to that, for people who just feel so overwhelmed with how busy their lives are and trying to figure out how to properly allocate their lives in a way that is able to be ordered in a sense, right?
Yeah. It's a very fair question, and I really appreciate it. And I want to divide it into two categories of what you may be bringing up. And one has to do with the chosen sphere in which you're in that may have been unfulfilling before and is more fulfilling now. And one has to do with a seasonality at which there's a period of one's career where they may have less margin than they do in another. And the analogy I want to use is child rearing. I have a soon-to-be 21-year-old, 18-year-old, 15-year-old, and I'm still a very actively engaged parent and close with all three of my children and all the good things parents are supposed to be doing at this stage. But what I'm doing with those three kids is very different than what I was doing when they were 0, 2, and 5. Like, for one thing, back then they wanted to be around me. So the responsibilities of changing diapers, of being up in the middle of the night, of coming home, of reading stories, of feeding, that was not normative for parenting over the holistic multi-decades of child rearing. At that point in the process, it involved certain time and energy commitments, and then those changed over time, but there's still significant time and energy commitments, but they shift. And many of our careers are similar. There's a period of time in which there are trade-offs. And there's periods of time where those change, where certain benefits of scale accrue to the worker that is not as possible at an earlier stage of their career. Now, it's so hard for me, speaking up here about macro principles and creational norms, to get into the weeds of all the micro-specific things. And I just don't want to be guilty of acting as if those high-level principles apply to every nook and cranny of particulars. For one thing, when you say that you were working, I thought you said as a bond trader, and I didn't catch with what you're doing now, but it sounded like you didn't feel fulfilled in that. That particular line of work was not animating you, and now you're in a line of work that not only do you have the margin for church activity and Bible study and other things in your life you care about, but you like the work better. And this is all I'm saying, and there's a whole bonus chapter in the book that they're giving you here about this. All I'm asking people to do is they seek the wisdom in their own life as to what their own calling is, and the venue for that might change. I spent years and years as managing director at Morgan Stanley, and now I run my own business. And in a past life, I managed Christian musical bands. I've done a few different things, but the fact of the matter is that what I've done in each of them, even for someone that may have started off in the butcher business who now becomes a pastor, is attacking it with a true passion for whatever that endeavor may be at that time, and allowing the process to play out as doors close and doors open to what your own unique calling may be. I do believe, this is very important, by the way, for Christians to defend a market economy. I want you to have the freedom to leave a career as a bond trader, to go to a career that's gonna fill your cup. Freedom is enhanced. Opportunities for mobility and dynamism in the workplace are enhanced with greater freedom. Less freedom in the marketplace limits that optionality. So in a lot of ways, you and I are benefits of the miracle of the liberal society, that we have more opportunities available to us. And that mobility is a good thing. So I don't think that one particular job that is constricting things, that my theology of work is saying you're stuck there, learn to love it. But I do want each individual to question, is what they're not loving the work itself? They're called to something different. Their skills and their giftedness belong in a different venue. That can completely happen. I mentioned I worked with musicians. I can't stand musicians. I'm just kidding. I am kidding, really. But like I believe from the bottom of my heart that these things require wisdom. And I want to do more, and I want this center that the church is starting to do more to equip people to answer those questions on a bottom-up basis. But from stage today, it becomes more top-down, and those principles have to be there before you can do bottom-up adjudication. I hope that's helpful. I see one here. And yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for this. I've been in New York around 10 years now, and there feels in the atmosphere and in the marketplace as well, there's this hunger and like this new gold rush for faith.
Yeah.
How can we steward best the moment in such a way that faith is not treated as a new segment of the market, but as the engine of it?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a wonderful question. And in a lot of ways, the question has the answer in it, right? I mean, we cannot compartmentalize our lives in a way that says, I have the faith bucket, but then there's the market bucket. This is why it is not academic for me. It is not theological pontificating. It is the heart of the Christian life to repudiate dualism. That this kingdom theology that does not say there's a sacred secular distinction. When I say my faith matters, and that then in different applications has to mean something. One application may be the way in which I raise my children. One may be the way in which I minister to someone who's struggling with substance abuse. One may be the way in which I share the gospel with an unsaved friend or bring somebody to Alpha. And one may be the way in which we live out in our careers and demonstrate that ambition, professional vocation, that image-bearing responsibility. Now, I do believe that there is an inadequate priority on the latter, and that in real life, most of us will spend more time at work than we will ministering to a friend who's dealing with substance abuse. But I want faith to be driving all of it. And then why the thing we're going to spend the most time doing, the thing that God has most called us to do in terms of the ordering of our lives, would be the lowest priority for so many believers. That's the part I'm trying to invert a bit. But there's no way to do this with a separatist attitude. Like, I got to keep the faith bucket going and then the market bucket going, and hopefully I do the market stuff well. I want it fully integrated. Integration sometimes becomes an unhelpful buzzword. But like those questions that Pastor John put up on the screen earlier, the things we want to ask others, the things we want to ask ourselves, and there's so many tools and resources and things that allow us through discipleship to get into this deeper. But faith and markets not being separate components on our shelves, but all being kind of rooted to the same thing, this doctrine of God made us in this world to go do something, that to me is the starting point. Okay, thanks. Yes.
Hey, I'm a 38-year-old guy who has 3 kids and a wife, and my desire is to be excellent at everything.
38, so young.
I want to be an excellent employee, right, and work well. I want to be an excellent husband. I want to be an excellent son. I also want to prioritize time in the secret place, but there's obviously time management issues, capacity issues. Yeah. So what practical advice do you have to make sure that in the pursuit of being excellent in one sphere, it doesn't come at the expense of another sphere?
Well, it will come at the expense of another sphere seasonally, and so let's not put a burden on ourselves that God doesn't put on us. I mentioned the example of that, like when I was managing money during the financial crisis, I'm sorry, but my daughter's poetry reading in first grade became a lesser priority for me. And you know what? She doesn't remember that I wasn't there. Now, maybe she will tell her therapist one day. But I had a pretty deep and solemn responsibility in my work in capital markets and clients at that time. And so it was sort of an extreme analogy where I think it would have been silly to leave my desk in the midst of September 2008 to go to a soccer practice or something like that. And then there have been gazillions of times it's reversed the other way. I can do a client meeting tomorrow, but tonight my kid has this or my wife needs that or whatever. And it also, by the way, helps. And you mentioned you're married with 3 kids. And I will just say for myself, my wife, I could not have done it without my wife. Like, she's an angel to have put up with me and to have the same understanding and same priorities and same regard for all these things we're trying to do together in our lives and in our marital union. So a supportive spouse is a really big part of this as well. And I don't ever want to fail to emphasize that. But then when it comes to like just day-to-day things, I do get asked this a lot. And I think that there's some life principles for managing time that are normative and some that are very situational. Different people function different ways. There's a lot of night owls in New York City, and I'm not a night owl anymore. And so I wake up at 3:40 in the morning every single day, whether I'm a local time, whatever time zone I happen to be in. And that means I'm not out till 1 in the morning, or if I have a dinner event, which I do a lot more of in New York than California, but like I'm doing the dinner, and let's just say I'm not ordering dessert, I'm ordering the check. You know, I'm trying to like, gotta go, let's move this along, okay? So I value the morning time, and I do a lot of reading and writing. It is very vital to my business. And if I didn't have a few hours of total solitude every morning, it would drastically impact my business. So that's me. I lean into early morning hours. God made me a morning person. And my late father was a total morning person as well. Other people, it's a different thing of what they kind of do, how they manage weekends, how they manage their family schedule. I know that the best thing I can say is that there is an answer. It's a different one for each person because God made all of us unique. We all have subjective taste and preferences and whatnot, but nobody gets it right without intentionality, trial and error. Saying I'm going to try this new routine. Like I have for the last about almost 2 years now, as I was about to turn 50, I said, I'm tired of my weight going way up, way down. I'm going to get weight off and I'm going to keep it off. And instead of being like a total gym hound for 2 months and then not going for 2 months, I'm going to work out basically every day till I die, at least 6 days a week. And I had to think about this. Like if I told myself I'm going to go to the gym on the way home from work, I'm never going to do it. I'm just not going to. So I had to work in what the workout would be in the morning routine to make it happen. All habits are formed the same way with some intentionality and some know thyself component of what makes sense in our own discipline, our own personality, and our own reality. And I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's honestly the best answer I have. I think I'm a pretty productive person. I work really hard, but people ask secret sauce all the time, and I'm just telling you, it's the mornings for me. That's it. Yes. I'll come here, and then we'll come to you next. Yeah.
Hey, David. One, thank you. I get to listen to you every Monday on the Money Beat on the World, and I've gotten acquainted with your excellence in your craft. But then to get to sit under your teaching today and hear the theological undergirding of that is really incredible. So
thank you for that. Thank you.
Question about, so I work at a firm, PwC, big firm. And there's probably a lot of people here who work for big companies who have a vision for how we could see how grace can impact the nature of our firm or our company and orient it to the redemptive. And we're maybe, like I find myself in middle management at the moment, right? So we don't have maybe the sovereignty yet to influence our firm to be fully towards the redemptive. But we do have people that we encounter. For me, there's a population of Christian partners at PwC who maybe don't quite get it, and they're just discovering this faith and work. And then there's a lot of people who have no understanding of Jesus, or they live outside of the realm of how we think. What advice do you have for influencing our firms or companies towards the redemptive?
Well, and the fact that the question is, what advice do I have for influencing those companies, means that I might have misheard a prior sentence where I thought you said, we don't have the sovereignty to influence. And so what I want to say is you do have the sovereignty to influence. But without sovereignty, without managerial control, without certain institutional levers, you don't have the power to completely change it. But John uses these words a lot about influence and shaping, and that has to be good enough. It is true with enough institutional levers, there's a power dynamic that you might have a lot more ease at just setting policy. Just being much more deliberate and expedient in this formation. But the influence and shaping is available now, but sometimes albeit at a very small level. And Zechariah 4:10 says, do not despise the day of small beginnings. If all you get to do is some of these folks, one of which was an intern, or up here doing a prayer group at their work, that's big. And maybe one day it leads to the CEO of a major company being a believer and implementing a whole lot more of activities that are friendly to the values and worldview we're espousing. But to me, it is a faithfulness in the venue that we're in and allowing what levers we do have it's hard when we say, if I don't have full power, I can't do anything. I think more often than not, that's used to basically excuse us from showing up, from engagement. You have to be faithful with the little things so that God will bless us with the bigger things. And that's true in our individual lives, but it's true institutionally as well. And I couldn't quite catch what the name of the company is, but whatever, you could tell me afterwards, but I'm just gonna pray that one day that company is entirely run in the C-suite by fellow believers, because I think it will be, as the waters cover the sea. All right, do we have time for one more, two more? I know she's had her hand up. And then, are you asking a question? Or you're the mic guy, I'm sorry. Okay.
Hi there. So I have a question about women specifically. So I have a desire to be a mother. I'm not a mother yet, but I hope to be, and I want to be a really intentional, loving mother to my children. I also have a husband who has an amazing career. He's had a lot of success, and I never want to take away from that too. Yeah. I also have a desire to have a successful career myself. So do you have advice for women specifically who want to be theologically honoring of the identity of a woman?
Yeah. So I wrote this book. It came out February 2024. It was called Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life. And the very first event we did for the book was over at the Union League Club off a park for National Review. And a young woman raised her hand and asked a question a little bit different, but similar to yours at that very first event. And then every event and interview I did for the next year, the question came up. And it was the only thing I was really livid with myself. And for any of you who have ever written a book, like, you know, once you submit it, it's done. You don't get to go back and change it when it's printed, and sometimes you wish you could. And I really wished that I had addressed that subject. So when the publisher a year later said, we're now gonna go do the paperback, it was only hardback for the first year, I asked if I could implement a bonus chapter as a kind of makeup of what I missed in the initial book. And so addressing this issue about women was added, and it's in the version they're giving there, along with a couple of other questions that also, you know, I realized like, oh, I can elaborate now that I've heard more from people about it. There is a sense in which it's very difficult to answer in the context of what my book's mission was, which was not intended to be for a male audience, but it was intended to be for an audience that has become disgruntled or disenfranchised from the merit of work. And I think in the baby boomer generation that has said the purpose of work is to go retire and go then golf and sail around the world. And then the Gen X, which I'm smack dab in the middle of, that is largely dealing with this midlife crisis stuff of, okay, I worked and did all these things, I put my kids through college, I paid off the house, but now what is my life all about? And they're in this sort of midlife crisis mode. And then down, different application of millennials and different application of Gen Z. But I went through the generational theory stuff to have something applicable to each generation. And the fact of the matter is that I just believe that the biggest deficiency in each of those generations is with men, not women. And when I criticize the declining labor participation force in our country that went from 68.1% in 2007 to 62.3% now, and we talk about 6% of 160 million person labor force being gone, they're not women. That 84% of prime working age able-bodied men are working, and about 3% of them want a job and can't have one, and the vast majority of the remainder have left from the workforce. And there is something in the range of 4 million men that are collecting disability to not work in between the ages of 29 and 45. And the labor participation force for women is the highest it's ever been. So even though I missed the opportunity to address something theological that is unique about men and women, sociologically, it was kind of intentional that like a lot of things today, I really do have this heart for men getting it together. But then to the point of your question, that was no excuse for me to miss this topic. You know, my wife was a stay-at-home mom and was incredibly supportive of my life and career when our kids were young. And then when they got older, she has now come inside our company and plays a leadership role in our business. And I couldn't do what I do without her. So we have, let's just say there's never a time where there's nothing to talk about at the dinner table. That's unique in our situation. I think that the complexity around the answer, because of women and having children and the roles with their husbands, all those things, it wasn't a complexity I wanted to invite in this topic, but I also think it was not good for me to ignore it. And so the general message that I share in the book is, to the extent I'm defining work as the production of goods and services that meet the needs of humanity, I never said it required a paycheck. That there are women who are working at home, who are working harder than any man I know at a factory classroom or office. There are women who are having a career outside the home and managing the balancing of that with their home life. And though you get into an area at that point where I'm not qualified to speak to it, I carry my own burden and other women carry that burden. But my point being, my definition of work laid out today is agnostic about if one is male or female or if one is generating a paycheck. Now, I say that economically, somebody cannot just say, I don't need to work for a paycheck. I'm going to go work with all my heart and not get paid. And I say, that's great, but that's only because someone else was working that got paid. Either someone in your home or some parents or grandparents before you that left you a legacy or some other form. There is an economic dynamic that exists. But to the issue of career women and how to balance those different things, I think that it's a very, very important topic, and I don't think I'm the best person to write about it. I just spent 7 minutes telling you why I can't really answer your question. I think we're going to close with prayer and go into lunch. I'm going to invite Pastor John to come back up. Thank you all very much.